What are your night shift horror stories? Many years ago, I worked at a regional radio station in the middle of effing nowhere, Australia. I was the overnight operator, keep the overnight playlist running, set up for the morning, do all the manual checks for the next day, and jump on the desk if anything funky happens. I spent a lot of time sitting in what was essentially a tin shed in the middle of a paddock, with my dog, shoes off, listening to 50s and 60s music and doing crossword puzzles. Except one night when the roost shooters came through. They spooked the kangaroos in the paddock, and one of them jumped headfirst through our office window. So there's me, barefoot and half asleep, when this 6-tall kangaroo smashes through the glass window. Blood and glass everywhere. My dog starts chasing the kangaroo, I'm chasing my dog. And the kangaroo bounds around the office, knocking crap off desks in the dark, bleeding everywhere. I ran and opened the studio bay doors, and my dog chased it outside. Where, I'm assuming, the poor thing, the kangaroo, was shot. Then I had to call my boss. Edit, Bandit, the dog, was fine. She lived a long and healthy life, occasionally being bullied by our pet cockatiel. Web link. What did your boss say when you told him a kangaroo had jumped through the window and created what looked like a murder scene? Something along the lines of, F me dead. Are you okay? Is Bandit, my dog, okay? Then he drove in to help clean up. Man, that is a good boss. Long story short, I once crashed a friend's car while he was out of state. He let me use his car as my fiancé at the time came out to visit me so we didn't have to rent a car. Well, I got into a wreck and totaled it. After calling the authority and my platoon sergeant, I called him. It was probably dinner time where he was and enjoying his family. I told him what happened, and the first thing he asked was, "Are you guys okay? I hope you aren't hurt." It was a brand new car and he first thought to ask if we were okay. He got out of the army and we lost touch, but I'll never forget that lesson. People are worth more than objects. Worked a parking garage at the airport. Cleaning the top deck and noticed about 100 ravens all over a truck with a tarp over the bed. Took my flashlight expecting something awful. Noticed as I got closer the smell and the ravens taking turns going in a hole they had torn open and popping out covered in gunk. Some guy left a broke-down beater with a couple animal carcasses in the back to rot. No heads. Checked the logs and the damn truck had been there since November and it was April, so everything was just thawing and breaking down. Oh God. That's so Raven. What do you do in such case? Call my boss who calls maintenance to get a crew out there. They had airport police come over and do an investigation to make sure there was no human remains. Some trophy hunter flew in, bought a cheap truck, caught what he wanted and left the rest for us to deal with. Didn't even bother to register or update the vehicle title, so the guy who sold it got a knock on his door from the police. This is why you always keep a copy of the bill of sale and proof of registration cancellation. I work at a towing company and it's shocking how often the only point of contact on a vehicle is some last registered owner who sold it cash and never looked back, while the person who bought it never registered it, never inspected it, often used it as a drug mule and left it abandoned somewhere or as a getaway car. If you sell a car, make sure to document proof that the car isn't your responsibility anymore, because you might get a knock on your door someday. Make sure to document proof that the car isn't your responsibility anymore, because you might get a knock on your door someday. They can still get a bit crafty if it's the second time you've sold your beater to a bank robber. I will say though, both those guys were a pleasure to do business with. Was running the register at 24 hours. Supermarket. Stock person comes running into produce carrying mop handle screaming, "You mother effer." Out of sight, he keeps yelling effer. And smacking handle at something. For like 5 minutes I am ringing up customers, and freaking out because he was losing his mind, but I am not interested in getting involved in a murder. So I ignore it. Later I find out he was chasing a rat. Completely reasonable response from the stalker. Better to beat it to death now than have pest control poison it and have it die in a wall somewhere. The flies, dear God. The flies. I used to work night shift as a care aide in an old folks' home. It was already creepy. The home was an old hospital that was converted. Some butthole kept walking around the courtyard after dark dressed as the Grim Reaper knocking on doors. It was actually really scary. He ran off and the facility got a security guard for a few weeks. I bet it ended up on YouTube. Like and subscribe, guys. Of all the heartless and insensitive things to do, I swear some people are simply devoid of morals, and it's not a new phenomenon. It's always been this way. One day he will knock on the door of some Vietnam vet who smuggled in his M60. I worked in a residential treatment center for teen girls. One girl with some severe trauma, rape, abuse, came sleepwalking into the room screaming to please untie her while clawing at her wrists. She was begging me to help her because he's torturing me. I sat her down and pulled her bracelets and watch off. She went completely limp, then got up and went back to bed. It freaked me out seeing the raw emotion of her trauma, since she was always smiling and relatively calm during the day. Another time I was doing my nightly checks and a guy suddenly walked out from behind the door coming at me. I screamed and threw my flashlight at him. It was a smiley face balloon. That second scenario sounds like the fake out in a horror movie before you turn around and the actual murderer is standing there. That's the signature of the balloon face killer. He always uses a smiley face balloon to distract his victim as he comes from behind them to strangle them, usually with a sad face balloon. We got to catch this guy, Sergeant. Warning, medical gross stuff incoming. I worked in an emergency room. The worst night that comes to mind involves a patient that was bitten by a baby timber rattlesnake. He was bleeding out of every single orifice by the time he got to us. More blood than I'd ever seen before outside of a motorcycle versus 75 mph headfirst to asphalt. I don't remember how many doses of Crofab we gave him, but it was the hospital's entire supply. But trying to get him stabilized, arranging the helicopter transport to a bigger and better equipped facility, all the blood, those weren't the worst parts. The worst part was when the patient lost control of his bowels. I will never, ever, forget that smell. I spent the entire time standing by the door with a battery-powered fan and a handful of gauze pads saturated with cinnamon oil trying to reduce some of the smell. The doctor occasionally stuck her head out just so I could waft the cinnamon oil in her face. Yes, by some miracle, the patient did end up surviving, and as far as I know he made a full recovery. But the blood, the smell, and just the shock of it all. Yeah, never underestimate a baby timber rattlesnake. People seem to forget that the baby had the same venom as the mama, and babies never dry bite. Was an orderly in a hospital? 2 of us were sitting in the basement office adjacent to the morgue. A guy passed our office, looking at us a little shifty, came back again and asked if we had access to the morgue. We said yes, thinking he was doing a pickup for a funeral home, but that seemed strange given it was around 12 o'clock to 12:30 a.m. Nope. He wanted to pay us to let him in, and leave him alone with the bodies for an hour. We escorted him up to security. Apparently he had tried it in the past, as security knew him. Did he have a hot plate and a 6-pack of beer? It was raccoon meat. Work in the winter for me is plowing and snow removal. It was late and I had been out for over 24 hours at this point, pulled over into a small cul-de-sac with the nearest house being over 100 yards away so I could let the truck stay on so I could stay warm. 6-wheel Mac things loud. As I'm nodding off, there was a very loud bang and it felt like someone then pulled on my driver's side door handle. Luckily I always lock my truck doors. I immediately threw on every strobe/rear/headlight and started looking around, and I saw absolutely nothing. It scared the crap out of me. Needless to say, I never sleep anywhere other than lit parking lots now. This sounds a lot like exploding head syndrome. What, please explain? According to Google, exploding head syndrome is a parasomnia. A parasomnia involves undesired events that come along with sleep. Exploding head consists of a loud noise that you suddenly imagine just before you fall asleep. Edit. Wow, glad my quick Google search was able to help people identify what they've been experiencing. Here's the website Google cited, for those interested in reading more. Web link. This is crazy. I had this happen to me yesterday morning. Just as I was nodding off, I heard a huge crash or bang. Had to get up and look around the house. I was also home alone. It sounded like it happened in my head/dream. This sometimes happens to me, but instead of a loud bang, it's usually a voice saying something I can't understand. One time it was the voice of SpongeBob saying hello directly in my left ear. It really does freak you out for a second, and yeah, it has this dreamlike quality to it where you can sort of tell that it's in your head, but at the same time it sounds like it's in the room. You gave it a name. This has happened to me a handful of times when I've been alone and falling asleep, like daytime nap or when partner is out of town. Freaky as hell, just assumed it was a burglar or I'm going nuts. Gonna do more Googling. THX. Did hospital security for about 2 months. It was small hospital out in the sticks, so we were responsible for removing patients who had passed from their rooms and transferring into the morgue freezer. We had just brought a decedent to the morgue, and right before we were about to transfer them to the freezer, their cell phone rang. Granted, pretty tame compared to some stories, but at the time it gave us a decent fright. That's actually really sad. Someone was trying to reach them and didn't yet know that they had died. Might have been a scam call. Leaving one night from work, I was followed by a log truck and it kept going faster and faster until I was at 100 miles per hour. I pulled off as the truck blew past my car, rocking it. Thing was, there was twisty turns ahead. Couldn't find the truck. Update: no, he wasn't experiencing brake failure. This was on an uphill, which the route is slow and progressively uphill. I'm not on the Grapevine or 4th of July pass. It was just hauling ass. They were running bobtail. Usually if a truck loses brakes, the driver would probably engage engine brakes and downshift. Jeepers creepers was on your ass. Worked as an evening manager at a major Hilton property. Got a complaint from a bunch of guests about the noise coming from one of the rooms. Turns out, a drunken man was beating the crap out of his wife and had the door barricaded so we couldn't get in. I called the cops, and they had to get into the room using the balcony from the next room over. I'm still traumatized by what I saw when they finally arrested him and got the wife out of the room. She was covered in blood. It was horrifying. Oh crap, I was working in the restaurant/room service at a Hilton in college, and, while no one actually saw what happened, my manager told me he saw the inside of the room and it was covered in blood. Like on the bed, on the carpet, in the bathroom, on the walls, etc. The guy told my manager his wife got a nosebleed. Saw all kinds of crazy crap working room service at the Hilton. Geez, I did hotel security. I was basically brought in as relief for when groups of kids would be brought in to deal with noise complaints, but for some reason on the non-busy days is when all the crazies would come out. The main guards would always tell me crap that happened. One time a guy was beating his girlfriend or wife. Obviously the people near him heard it, so they called in the complaint. Security goes up with the manager because they said, we hear someone being beat, so they go to the room. The guy answers but acts as if nothing is happening while he is out of breath and has some blood on his shirt. So management asks to see everyone in the room just to be safe. The dude slams the door shut, locks it, and jumps 3 stories, breaks his leg, still manages to get away, and I believe he got caught when he tried to get back across the border. Yeah, working at a hotel is totally boring at times, but you see some crazy crap from time to time. Another memory at this hotel, a guy apparently brought a high-end prostitute with him, and then decided to kick her out of his room. I don't know if they had some kind of a disagreement or if he just decided he didn't want to pay her or something. Fine. Not my business. The problem was, he kicked her out of the room while she was butt-ass naked. We had this naked lady running around the hotel, like trying to take cover behind things. Felt pretty terrible for her, but it was also pretty absurd. She eventually dove back behind the front desk and they were able to get her covered up. When they tried to confront the man in the room, he was long gone. While she was running around drawing attention, he quietly snuck down the stairs and out a side door. We also have an annual butt rock music festival in town, and the swarms of rednecks that would show up were just ridiculous. Our hotel would sell out and get nuts. Then I'd have middle-aged drunk dudes calling me at room service asking for the dumbest crap, like bottles of Andre, or asking me what horse stoovers are, he meant, hors d'oeuvres. My manager and I once were running room service orders and the fire alarms went off. We found a standard size room with like 10 people staying in it, and they were trying to cook their own sausage and bacon in the room. Oh, and then there was another time we got a room service order, and when my coworker knocked on the door, Martin Short answered. That's the end of the story, but I thought it was great because Martin Short rules. I was super bummed I wasn't working that night, but my coworker said he was the nicest dude in the world. Do major hotel chains have a way of sharing no service customers? I'd say this guy qualifies. All I know is that he went to prison and was banned from all Hilton properties for life. Back in the Stone Ages, I worked for a couple different hotels with the same management company. We were just off the highway, so there were a ton of hotels. If one of us got a creep or someone scary, there was definitely a bit of a phone tree to not rent or even let them in the door. When my junkie ex beat the crap out of me in a hotel room, choked me until I passed out, then disappeared, I woke up to the desk clerk banging on the door telling me they were kicking us out or calling the cops to remove us. I sobbed through the door that he was gone and begged them to let me sleep and not let him back in, but they refused and kicked me out. I slept on a stone bench by the river a few blocks from the hotel and woke up covered in bruises and barely able to move. I'm so glad you guys went above and beyond to help her. I don't think I'll ever get over how they treated me when I so clearly needed help, and it was a pretty nice hotel, too. I couldn't believe it was handled that way. I wish more people were like you. So sorry that happened to you. Hope you're doing better now. I am. Learning self-respect is a slow process, but I'm getting there. My biggest regret is that my mom worked so hard to try to break the cycle of abuse in our family history, and I was too blind at the time to listen to her. All those years she gave me great advice and support, but I had to learn it myself, and it killed her to see it happen to me, too. I wish I'd listened. Thank you for watching. If you like our videos, please like them on YouTube. And share them with your friends. Please subscribe to be the first to know about Red Rabbit Reader's new videos. We welcome your comments below. Another of our videos will begin shortly.